For all companies, past success is no guarantee of future success. Even successful companies fall short or face challenges and thus have to make changes. Control is a regulatory process of establishing standards to achieve organizational goals, comparing actual performance to the standards, and taking corrective action when necessary to restore performance to those standards. Control is achieved when behavior and work procedures conform to standards and when company goals are accomplished. Control is not just an after the fact process, however. Preventative measures are also a form of control. The control process begins when managers set goals by satisfying 90% of customers or increasing sales by 5%. Companies then specify the performance standards that must be met to accomplish those goals. Standards are a basis of comparison for measuring the extent to which the organizational performance is satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Standards can also be determined by benchmarking other companies. Benchmarking is the process of determining how well other companies, not just competitors, perform business functions or tasks. In other words, benchmarking is the process of determining other companies' standards. When setting standards by benchmarking, the first step is to determine what to benchmark. Organizations can benchmark anything from cycle time, how fast, to quality, how well, to price, how much. The next step in the control process is to compare actual performance to performance standards. Although this sounds straightforward, the quality of this comparison depends largely on the measurement and information systems a company uses to track performance. The better the system, the easier it is for companies to track their progress and identify problems that need to be fixed. The next step in the control process is to identify performance deviations, analyze those deviations, and then develop and implement programs to correct them. This is similar to the planning process. Regular, frequent performance feedback allows workers and managers to track their performance and make adjustments in effort, direction, and strategies. Control begins by setting standards, measuring performance, and then comparing performance to those standards. If the performance deviates from the standards, then managers and employees analyze the deviations and develop and implement corrective programs that they hope will achieve the desired performance by measuring the standards. Managers must repeat the entire process again and again in an endless feedback loop, a continuous process. Thus, control is not a one-time achievement or result. It continues over time, that is, it is dynamic, and requires daily, weekly, and monthly attention from managers to maintain performance levels at the standard, that is, it's cybernetic. Cybernetic derives from a Greek word meaning steersman, that is, one who steers or keeps on course. The control is cybernetic because consistent attention to the feedback loop is necessary to keep the company's activity on course. Control is achieved when behavior and work procedures conform to standards and goals are accomplished. By contrast, control loss occurs when behavior and work procedures do not conform to standards. To determine whether control is worthwhile, managers need to carefully assess regulation costs, that is, whether the costs and unintended consequences of control exceed its benefits. If a control process costs more than it benefits, it may not be worthwhile. Another factor to consider is cybernetic feasibility, the extent to which it's possible to implement each of the 3 steps in the control process. If one or more steps cannot be implemented, then maintaining effective control may be difficult or impossible. Bureaucratic control is top-down control in which managers try to influence employee behavior by rewarding or punishing employees for compliance or non-compliance with organizational policies, rules, and procedures. Most employees, however, would argue that bureaucratic managers emphasize punishment of non-compliance much more than rewards for compliance. Bureaucratic management and control were created to prevent just this type of managerial behavior. By encouraging managers to apply a well-thought-out rule, policy, or procedure in an impartial, consistent manner to everyone in the organization, bureaucratic control is supposed to make companies more efficient, effective, and fair. Ironically, it frequently has just the opposite effect. Managers who use bureaucratic control often emphasize following the rules above all else. Another characteristic of bureaucratically controlled companies is that, due to their rule and policy driven decision making, they're highly resistant to change and slow to respond to customers and to competitors. In many companies, bureaucratic control has evolved into objective control, which is the use of observable measures of employee behavior or output to assess performance and influence behavior. However, bureaucratic control focuses on whether policies and rules are followed. Objective control focuses on observing and measuring worker behavior or output. There are two kinds of objective control: behavior control and output control. Behavior control is regulating behaviors and actions that workers perform on the job. The basic assumption of behavioral control is that if you do the right things, that is, the right behaviors, every day, then those things should lead to goal achievement. Behavior control is still management-based, however, which means that managers are responsible for monitoring and then rewarding or punishing workers for exhibiting desired or undesired behaviors. Instead of measuring what managers and workers do, output control measures the results of their efforts. In addition, behavioral control regulates, guides, and measures how workers behave on the job. Output control gives managers and workers the freedom to behave as they see fit if they accomplish pre-specified, measurable results. Output control is often coupled with rewards and incentives. Rather than monitoring rules, behavior, or output, another way to control what goes on in organizations is to use normative control to shape the beliefs and values of the people who work there. With normative controls, a company's widely shared values and beliefs guide worker behavior and decisions. Normative controls are created in two ways. First, companies that use normative controls are very careful about who they hire. While many companies screen potential applicants based on their abilities, normatively controlled companies are just as likely to screen potential applicants based on their attitudes and values. Second, with normative controls, managers and employees learn what they should and should not do by observing experienced employees and by listening to the stories they tell about the company. Although normative controls are based on the beliefs that are strongly held and widely shared throughout a company, concertive controls are based on the beliefs that are shaped and negotiated by work groups. Concertive control is not established oversight. Highly autonomous work groups evolve through two phases as they develop concertive control. In Phase 1, group members learn to work with each other, supervise each other's work, and develop the values and beliefs that will guide and control their behavior. And because they develop these values and beliefs themselves, work group members feel strongly about following them. The second phase in the development of concertive control is the emergence and formulation of objective rules to guide and control behavior. These beliefs and values, developed in Phase 1, usually develop into more specific objective rules as new members join the team. The clearer those rules, the easier it becomes for new members to figure out how and how not to behave. Self-control, also known as self-management, is a control system in which managers and workers control their own behavior. Self-control does not result in anarchy, in which everyone gets to do whatever he or she wants. In self-control or self-management, leaders and managers provide workers with clear boundaries within which they may guide and control their own goals and behaviors. The balanced scorecard encourages managers to look beyond such traditional financial measures to 4 different perspectives on company performance. The balanced scorecard has several advantages over traditional control processes that rely solely on financial measures. First, it forces managers at each level of the company to set specific goals and measure performance in each of the 4 areas. The second major advantage of the balanced scorecard approach to control is that it minimizes the chances of sub-optimization, which occurs when performance improves in one area at the expense of decreased performance in others.